Welcome to the Makelky Leadership Academy podcast, the only podcast designed for student athletes like you to level up their leadership. In this episode, we're going to go over leadership lesson number 1. After 2 years of teaching leadership class, I got asked to teach a class that didn't have a curriculum or a textbook or anything, and I was really excited to teach it, but then I thought, where do I start? How am I going to build this? And I had the idea of, why don't I just ask people in my network and people I know and people around town that are great leaders to come in and teach my students with me or for me, and I can learn from them and so can my students. And after 2 years of this class, we had over 40 leaders come in from all across the country, some of them on Zoom, some of them in person, and share awesome lessons. Since it's the summer, school's not in session, this is just a reflection and the best 10 lessons from those over 40 guest speakers, including an Army Ranger, DEA agent, law enforcement, military, business leaders, principals, athletic directors, teachers, an NFL and NBA consultant, all sorts of college coaches of different sports. Here are the top 10 lessons. We're going to start with this episode, and it's maybe the most important one. It's almost the prerequisite to leadership. And most leadership courses and books and people that I've talked to don't even mention this, but it's critically important. And that's the concept of followership. Let's get into it. What kind of leadership class starts with being a great follower? While this seems kind of backwards, it actually makes perfect sense. And if for no other reason, I want you to think of leadership this way. When you get hired or voted in or appointed to a position of leadership, why did the leaders choose you? It had to be your ability to help them achieve their goals. An example for student athletes, if you get voted to be a captain on your sports team, why? Well, the leaders on your team, that could be the seniors, the coaches, whoever's doing the voting, looks at the goals of the team and they think, hey, you're the best able to help us achieve those. You've been a follower first. That will get you an opportunity to be a leader. If it's at one of your entry-level jobs, if you're not great at sweeping the floor, you're never going to be the CEO. In my position, if I'm not a great teacher and I say, well, but I want to be a principal or I want to be this leader up here, I can't do my job effectively where I'm at. I'm never going to get an opportunity to be a leader in that capacity. So really, being a great leader starts with being a great follower. And a guy named Adam Bradley and his group of Lead 'em Up coaches coined this term followership, and that's what we used in our class. It's a skill, and to be a great leader, you have to have a high-graded followership skill. So what is that, and how can we use that? Think about this. Every leader has a boss. In other words, you might look up at your teacher and think, they're the leader of my classroom, but they have a principal. You might look at your head coach and say, they're the consummate leader, they're the head coach, but they have an activity director. You might look at your principal in your school and say, they're the leader of the whole school. And while they still have a boss, they have a superintendent. And you can go all the way up the chain. Even the president of the United States has a boss, the people of the United States. And in some ways, the other branches of government. But the point is that leaders aren't just a leader, they're also followers. You might just see the leadership side of them and not as much them being a follower. You're probably not in the meeting when the AD calls in the head coach. You're just at practice when he tells you how many push-ups to do and say, look, he's the leader. He gets to pick all this stuff. However, they're still a follower. So don't think that being a leader means you're no longer a follower. Everybody is still a follower. If you don't understand the vision of the leaders that you're serving, your group, your team, your class, your family, your country is going to be doomed to fail. You have to know, what does my leader need done? What's their big problem? What's the project that they're working on? What's their pain point? And then how can I, as their follower, help them achieve that or overcome that? That's all followership is. I thought I knew that, and I thought my bosses understand my problems. I don't have to tell them what I need. It's obvious. But I've learned this lesson of followership the hard way. One good example of that came at halftime of a football game. I was a young, hungry head coach and trying to turn around a football program that hadn't had a lot of success. before I was there and in the first year or two. And every head football coach's least favorite thing about homecoming is at halftime, usually some of the older guys that are key starters or two-way players get held out to do the pageantry stuff. They're the junior class royalty or the senior prince or whatever. I don't even understand how that stuff works. And I thought, okay, everyone understands my perspective as the coach, and I'm a leader first. I didn't appreciate I had to be a follower as well. And I gave a really brief chat to a couple of players. I still remember two of them looking at me like, we can't come into halftime. As a head coach, halftime is making adjustments, checking on injury status, refocusing the team to make sure we come back and win. And we were winning this game at halftime, and we did end up winning. But I looked at these older guys that had to stay out and miss halftime. And I told them, kiss the babies, wave at the crowd, and then get your butt in the locker room. We have a game to win. One of my mistakes, I said it a little bit differently than that, but I said it pretty loud, and I said it in front of the crowd. And a couple of the parents, including I know the mom of one of those young men for sure, heard me. And my AD, who was my boss, got some parent emails. I don't know how many, but at least one from a mom. And he called me in on Monday and had a talk with me. And he's like, hey, I heard you kind of chewed on these kids and maybe made them feel bad about being homecoming royalty. And I just laughed. I wasn't making them feel bad. I was just reminding them of the priority was to win the game. No one cares if you win the royalty thing if you lose. And he just looked at me like, you don't get it, man. And I listened, and he gave me this talk, and he said, to some of those parents, the royalty thing matters just as much as the game. And even to some of the kids, they just wouldn't tell you that. And at first I was defensive, like, are you kidding me? I'm the football coach. Of course I don't care about who's the homecoming royalty. I care about winning the game. But he told me something that I wouldn't forget. He said, those are the same parents that could get you run out of town in one board meeting. And that's when I realized that I hadn't been a very good follower to my boss in that capacity. And if I would have just taken a minute or a single email or even a text to him and said, hey, it's homecoming this week. Just so you know, my focus is to win the game. I'll support all the rah-rah stuff. But I'm going to tell my players, hey, if you have to stay out at halftime, I just expect you to hustle in and be a part of the halftime adjustments. If I would have done that ahead of time, one, nothing probably would have come of it because he would have understood. But two, if he didn't agree with that, because he is the leader in this dynamic over me, he could have said, choose your words carefully or don't say that to anybody in front of the stands. And I just wasn't thinking of that. I just thought, I'm the head coach. I'm here to win. I don't care about that stuff. But it was a reminder to me that I was not a very good follower in that moment. And I did need the support of those parents. And I definitely needed the support of my athletic director as a head football coach. And that really reinforced to me the importance of followership. Because you could be a great leader in a vacuum. But if you're not a great follower, you won't last in that position. You're going to get fired. You're going to get voted out. I didn't really appreciate that. And it made me go home and reflect. And these are some questions for you on the topic of followership, since you're a student athlete who wants to be a better leader or is in a position of leadership. Think of one boss, head coach, supervisor, teacher, parent, somebody who's a leader in your dynamic, and write down their name. Do you know what their biggest challenges or goals are? Let's say you wrote down your basketball coach and it's Coach Johnson. That's one of the leaders in my life. Okay, what's their biggest challenge? What's their biggest goal for the season or even for their tenure as a head coach? Write it down. And you're probably looking going, I don't know what that is. We'd like to think that leaders would tell us that, but like me, when I was a young coach, they might assume you already know. Like, why do I have to tell you? I want to win a championship, or I want to set the school record for points scored in a season, or whatever it is. But you probably don't know, and I doubt you've asked them. So you can guess what step 3 is. You need to have a talk with them. And if you're not going to see them anytime soon, a text or an email is not nearly as good as face-to-face or on the phone. But here's a little secret to getting the challenges or goals of your leader. bring in a piece of paper and a pen or pencil and look them in the eyes and write down what they say. And it doesn't have to be a big formal thing. If it's my basketball coach and I have practice tonight, I might say, hey, Coach Johnson, can we chat for 30 seconds after practice? And they'll usually say yes. If they're busy, find another time. Pull out that piece of paper, pull out the pen, and just say, hey, what's your biggest goal or challenge this season? What do you need our team to be better at? What do you want our program to improve on? What's keeping you up at night? And write that down. Don't put it in your phone because they're going to think you're Snapchatting. Write it on a piece of paper. If they give you 3, write down 3. If they give you 1, doesn't matter, write it down. And then what you do is you ask, what can I do to help fix that? What can I do to help make that happen? And they might say, you need to be 15 minutes early to every practice because we got people showing up late. I need you to be a leader by example with that. They might say, we need more people at off-season workouts. Bring 3 more to open gym or to weight training next week. They might say, we need to recruit the hallways. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You have that written down and you find a way to go work on that. And what's really powerful about this to improve your followership is you go do it. And then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, whenever you've made some progress on that, you bring the same piece of paper and a pen and you say, hey, coach, can we chat after practice? Yeah, what's up? You told me we wanted to increase our off-season workout attendance. The last 3 weeks, I've picked up 1, 2, 3 different teammates, and I've got them to each pick up 2. So now we have about 12 new people at workouts. Is that still the thing you want me working on? Do you want to increase that, or is there something else? And you just keep doing this. You write down what they say. Nope, we need more guys. Okay, cool. I'll get 3 new guys next week. Or, okay, that's good. Now we need to focus on this. We're out of shape. I need extra conditioning, student-led, at the fields at 7 p.m. 3 nights a week. I got you, coach. Write it on your piece of paper with your pen and go do it. That is the best way that I've seen to improve your followership. If you're not in a position of leadership, or say you're a leader on a JV team and you aspire to be the captain of the varsity team, don't just sit there and think about as a leader. First, what can I do to be a better follower for my program, for my team, for my head coach, for my teacher, for my boss at work? Then you will get opportunities to be in a position of leadership. Work on your followership first.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Makelky Leadership Academy podcast, the only podcast designed for student athletes like you to level up their leadership. Don't settle for being average. Leaders don't just do the bare minimum, they do more than expected. Now it's time for the most important part. To learn from a book, you must close the book. To learn from leadership class, you have to walk out of class. And to learn from this podcast, you have to turn off the podcast and do the work.